when you're at the beginning, you just look up to all the ones who are doing maybe what you want to do or where you want to get to, and you just think like, wow, they magically got there overnight. They're so talented. They must be just incredible at what they're doing to be where they're now, which is completely not true. There's this other quote, which is right now really my absolute favorite quote. Other people are less qualified than you, but doing what you want to be doing just because they're going for it. Other people aren't necessarily more talented than you. They just had more time to get where they are now.
Welcome to Very Beginning, a podcast where we shift the narrative from happy ending to exciting beginning. My name is Anastasia, and through conversations with inspiring entrepreneurs, athletes, influencers, and all around trailblazers, I'm looking to explore how we can get more comfortable with change and find the courage to unlock that scary first chapter to something we've been wanting to do for far too long. New episodes will be live every Sunday. So, without further ado, and so it begins. Nicole, let's take it from the very beginning.
Yes.
Thank you for being the guest of honor of my very, very first podcast. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much.
You have been super successful with your channel Yoga by Nicole. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you have thousands of followers, and you have beautiful, inspiring content on yoga, on mindfulness. So yeah, I think my first question, I would just love to know, how did you make that decision to start a journey and be really in this public eye on social media?
Yeah, it's so super interesting to think about that because it definitely was a journey. So I think I didn't really start all of this with the intention of like putting a lot of content out and reaching a lot of people. It it definitely started with a phase in my life where I started to get so interested into personal development, into yoga. To go a little bit even further back, I always had super many problems with my health because I had to have two surgeries while I was growing up on my right leg because I was born with spastic paralysis. And so I had to have surgeries that just corrected some misalignment in my body. And due to that, I then developed scoliosis and just was basically almost all my life always in so much back pain. And it just really got to a point where I realized, okay, I have to be now really committed to do something about this because it's just not going to get better. It's like going to get worse. And one thing that all doctors and physiotherapists always told me was to do yoga or Pilates, that both of those are just really, really good for the body, and especially when you have scoliosis. And so I started to go to yoga classes just in the gym that I went to, and it was so hard. It was super hard. I remember that so well. Like I was really in the worst state ever, like so inflexible, so weak. Like all my whole body was basically super weak, and yeah, it was so hard. And but right away I could feel, okay, this works. Especially there's also this saying that you the people who need yoga the most are those for whom it's the hardest. That's just when you need it the most. And then you can also really see, okay, this is something I should be doing and I should continue that. So I stick with it and could see super fast also just progress, feeling like my body's starting to open up, my back pain disappearing completely, and just it just trickled into all areas of my life basically. I think one of the probably most life-changing thing was just all about my mindset, that it made me realize I am the only one responsible for my health, responsible for what I'm going to do with my life, for which way I'm going to go. There's no one ever going to come and serve me anything on a silver platter or be like, this is what you should do. It's just all up to me. And if I set my mind to something, I can do it. So that was just a huge realization. And I realized, okay, I really enjoy this so much. Just this whole like bringing especially this message to a lot more people out there. And so I started to create my Instagram. But it was really like so many small steps, because when I think back, even like creating that Instagram channel took me so long. I've been thinking about it for so long, but then just was always so scared of what would people think, and isn't this so stupid, and blah blah blah. So that was really hard in the beginning.
It's so funny how this so often is holding us back because I mean, I'm doing something different now to you, but still like the same thing that I've been thinking about this and kind of manifesting it for so long, but then constantly think about, oh, should I do it? What will people think? What will people say? Which seems to me like, I mean, of course, I still worry about it, and maybe you still do too. But if you think about it, it seems so silly, right? Because there's only like one life that we
Totally.
have, and do take your steps, like do your thing. And yeah, it's fascinating, and I think that's also something I really want to like explore in this podcast, how how we can move forward and kind of don't worry so much about what people are thinking, because I truly believe that like positive energy attracts positive energy. So I'd also love like to hear, even when you started, was there kind of a lot of positive feedback, or were actually like, did you encounter some hate? How did that go for you, that
It
experience?
was overall super positive, I have to say. Also, to this day, I would say 99%, which is really crazy. And I think maybe also a bit rare in the online sphere, is so positive. And it's so interesting also how then all of a sudden also people that you maybe haven't talked to in forever, or where you never really thought like that they would ever say some, give some feedback to you, suddenly start to reach out to you and say, I think it's so cool what you're doing. Or, of course, the best thing ever is when people tell you, I'm so inspired by you. Like, I think that's just the best compliment you can get, is if you inspire someone. And yeah, I think I'm probably a bit lucky in that regard that it's been so positive. But I also think that if you do something, if you really put yourself out of your comfort zone and you do it just with also pure intentions and passion, I think it's really hard to hate someone for that, or to criticize it. Because I don't think you get like, if it has good intention, I don't think you give anyone like reason to criticize it. But what do you think now was that helped you to take that step to start the podcast?
I don't know. I think for me, it was really kind of, I mean, similar to what you said, right? Like a journey of just constantly like hearing this voice in my head. I don't know if it was the same for you. I mean, it sounds a bit like silly when you say it like that, but kind of always feeling like this urge, like I have this idea, I want to do it. I have this idea, I want to do it. And kind of, I've always knew I wanted to do something outside of like the traditional 9 to 5 corporate, which I also want to like talk to you about how you feel about it. But I never knew like the right timing, but now I don't know. This year, I just feel like it's truly the year of change. Like so many changes are happening around me. So I don't know. It just kept like creeping up on me. And I was talking, I think, to my mom about it, and she was saying like, I think what you're going through is like really feeling like you cannot not do it, and which I thought was so and then that just like stuck with me so much. And maybe we felt the same of like no one is forcing us to do it, right? We're like doing this scary thing, like stepping into this like public sphere and kind of opening ourselves to criticism because you're showing like your authentic self. But you just couldn't not do it. Like you just had this urge in you, like I have to put this out there. It just feels right to go, right? Like to take the step to do this. So yeah, I think in me it was just like something that was building up, and like I just wanted to like, get outside. So I decided to like, open the door and let it out. But I don't know, that's how it felt, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can so much relate to that. So, so, so much. And there's something that just reminded me what you said, of something that I read lately about how the quality of your life is always dependent on how much you're willing to be uncomfortable. And I think it's such a nice thing to have this feeling of, I have to do it, I cannot not do it. That's great. I think that's so nice to have. And I definitely had the same. I think probably mostly in regards to my YouTube channel, because that was something I've been putting out for so long. Like, I've really just didn't dare at all to upload a video, and was so scared of, oh my God, what are people gonna think? And there, I really had this inner conflict, that it was like the longer I postponed it, the more frustrated I got with myself, and also kind of like the unhappier I got somehow, which is crazy. Yeah. And then the funny thing is then what you realize, right? When you once you do it, how not scary it is actually. And that's just a thing, right? Action always kills fear. So you just have to do it, because once you've
Flash
done it.
out those inspirational quotes.
Yeah, I'm full of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really right. Just
Yeah.
like doing it, and then it's not scary anymore. And yeah, now,
Get used to
es-
it.
yeah, especially also now with when I upload a YouTube video, I almost like forget that it's out there. Like it's just like, well, it's just there now. People can watch it or not. Like,
Yeah, and in the beginning, was it like, "Oh my god, I uploaded it," like, was it, like, hard, the process in the beginning when you just uploaded it? Were you, like, constantly looking how many views, how many comments? Was it like that for you?
I I don't even remember if I was checking constantly, but probably I was. But yeah, it was really scary. I remember that. But just like I feel like the first few moments, and then I really kind of like forgot about it. And then I also just got so nice feedback, and that of course it helps a lot. Even though you should not at all make your feelings like dependent on that. But I mean, if you're in a place like that and then you get the feeling of like people actually like what you're doing or they think it's cool, then that helps a lot.
I'm curious, when you took this, like, let's say you uploaded your first YouTube video, posted like publicly on Instagram for the first time, what really like helped you take this like very first step out of your comfort zone?
Hmm.
Was it like one particular thing, like a quote that stuck with you, something you kept saying to yourself? Like, what was it that really where you were
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm leaving this comfort zone into the unknown?
Hmm. I think it was two things. One was um, a, a, a book I read that really inspired me a lot. It was Everything is Figure Outable, where she talks about uh, a kind of like a mindset trick you can play with yourself. Of imagine you're 80 years old and you look back at your life and you begin the sentence with "I wish I would have," and then you think about do you wish you would have done? And that was for me just really like, I wish I would have just started a YouTube channel and not care. So that was one thing that I think is really good to just think about. What are the things you really would regret if you don't do them? And then also just the fact that to really internalize, people just don't think about you as much as you think about yourself. And you are just not living in the spotlight. You're just not. Just like everyone is so focused on themselves. And that's just it would be just so stupid to not do something because you're worried what the other people will think, because they're probably not going to think anything because they're just busy with their own life and couldn't care less. So I think that those two things really helped me a lot, and that's really something I still now also tell myself constantly, like no one, because I catch myself, especially for example on Instagram, how I overthink my stories, and I'm like, is this stupid, should I post this, like questioning everything like a million times, and I'm just like, what's wrong with you? No one is going to look at this more than 2 seconds. So you should also always just like assume from yourself, when you yourself are for example on Instagram and look through stories, how long do you look at a story? Like you just swipe through it just like so quick. So yeah.
I'm so glad you brought it up because that's something I also want to talk about, the whole overthinking, and I think
Mhm.
imposter syndrome in particular.
Oh
And I
my god.
find imposter syndrome so fascinating. Like, I definitely want to make like a whole episode just about it. But
Mhm.
because that's something I'm dealing with right now. Like, even, starting this podcast, I'm like, why the hell would someone want to listen to me? Like, I'm not a specialist, like, not a behavioral psychology specialist, right? Like, what do I have to bring to people that they don't know? So I'm curious because you said you were also overthinking. Like, did you also face those typical concerns?
I really also struggle with that so much, and I have that a lot. But what I really try to just focus on is all like the things that I feel like I could contribute, and just trying to tell myself like I've experienced so much with my body and how I can just really take charge of that by myself. And that's my story. No one has the exact same story as me, and everyone has something special about them, right? And I want to use what I have to inspire others.
I think when we last spoke, you also said something that stuck with me. I think you said something about don't compare your meaning or something to someone else's. How did it go exactly?
Yeah, it's like, don't compare your level 1 with someone else's level 10.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that also helped me so much to hear that, because you really tend to, when you're at the beginning, you just look up to all the ones who are doing maybe what you wanna do or where you wanna get to, and you just think like, "Wow, they magically got there overnight. They're so talented. They must be just incredible at what they're doing to be where they're now," which is completely not true. There's this other quote, which is right now really my absolute favorite quote is, other people are less qualified than you, but doing what you want to be doing just because they're going for it. So, just like there's so many people who maybe like know way less about, for example, a certain topic than you do, but they're just putting it all, the things that they do know, they're just putting it all out and they're just doing it. And yeah, just getting somewhere because they're just not afraid. And I think, yeah, also remembering that other people aren't necessarily more talented than you. They just had more time to get where they are now.
When the whole overthinking becomes a problem, right? Because for me at least, I've been noticing that, like you start thinking about, let's say, starting a podcast, and then you like keep researching and you keep researching. And I think you and I are very similar in the way that we're perfectionists, right? And I remember we studied together, we did our bachelor's together. We would like always, right, like make sure we got the best grades and put in the hardest work. Like that then translates to now, right? And like to every level of our life. So with that, you also like, for me, I found myself like researching, listening to a bunch of other podcasts, and you see like, oh my God, this person like has perfect equipment, perfect lighting, like, and you start putting all this pressure on you. But then, like today, me with this crappy microphone because professional microphones didn't like arrive on time, like, well, but that is the beginning, right? And like I kind of want to try to live by the content that I'm putting out there to really say like, well, the first step is never perfect, and
No,
probably like, we should just accept it and just start.
totally. I also think it's so important and such a good point with what you said with perfectionism. Yeah, we both, I also know that we have that so much. And I think that is one of the most dangerous things, especially in the beginning, that you're trying to make it too perfect, because then you just end up not doing anything because you want it to just be right. And you will never have it right. It can always be better, right? And also, when I look back, I have to say at this point, I'm really proud of myself how, when I look back and see my content from like when I started to now, I can really see a huge difference. And I'm just so glad that I still put it out, because otherwise I wouldn't be where I am now if I would have just waited and waited and tried to just make it better and so on. Because the only way you will get better is if you do it and if you also get feedback on it. So I think it's so important to whatever you're doing, just to get it out and not worry about if it's perfect, if it could be better. Yes, it could be better always.
With that, especially talking about like this content creation and being in the public eye, and maybe they're like, I don't know, hopefully someone listening to it who is maybe considering also doing something like that. I think one of the biggest challenges is then how do you actually stay motivated, right? And how do you stay consistent? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
super curious, like how do you do it? And how maybe that even evolved from the start to now, if there was some involvement.
That's such a good question, because I feel like, especially with social media, it is so difficult to stay motivated, because it's such a numbers game, right? And you start to get so focused just on your growth, and it's so influenced by that. And for example, how it was for me, that it just came in so crazy waves that it took like such a long time for me to see some traction, and then like another time to see more traction, and just like up and down, up and down. And in super dangerous in the up periods to get kind of like addicted to that and be like, I want to have more and more and more, without and losing kind of like the losing the feeling for what you're actually achieving right now, always being just so focused, because you start to compare yourself to the next level and the next level, right? And then in the low periods, so difficult to just like not stop. So to get so demotivated by it. That's definitely what happened to me in some periods, where I would just see no growth anymore, or even like a decline, and then you just really be like, oh, why do I put so much effort into it if no one like really cares? And you just really forget that there are people who've been maybe following you for a long time, and you should, I think, in general, if you're doing like social media, always focus on your existing base, or not even with social media, just in general with any business, right? To always always focus on the ones that already support you instead of always wanting more and just getting so also so attached to the numbers. It's super difficult, and just also not defining yourself by it. And it's something I really have to also always just remind myself. So definitely also work in progress. But I think how I then try and stay motivated if I especially have like these low periods is, in general, I always try to keep the big picture in mind. Like, what's my vision? What do I eventually actually really want to do? And my goal is kind of like to just bring this message that I have, and it's just especially also just this feeling that you can do anything if you put in the work and if you believe in it. I want to give that to as many as possible, and just trying to keep that in mind and being like, okay, maybe right now it's just a really slow growth, but eventually if I just keep going, I'll just keep going. And also there keeping in mind, like, there's this other quote, right? We underestimate.
Yep. Go ahead, your little quote lexicon.
I'm gonna collect them all. So we underestimate, no, we overestimate how much we can achieve in like a few weeks or months, and we underestimate how much we can achieve in a few years. Also, for example, with my yoga practice, too, because I so often get the question, how do you stay consistent? How do you stay motivated? Because of course it's not that every day I feel like, yes, I want to practice now and I want to move my body. And so definitely takes so much discipline. And I think in order to stay disciplined, keeping in mind that it's always about the small things you do, right? Because the small things add up. And it's not about doing a huge thing once in a while that's going to bring you ahead, but about putting in the work every single day. And that's what's going to set you ahead so far. And thinking about, who am I going to be in 5 years from now? I can influence that so much. Who do I want to be? And keeping that in mind, that it's up to me and no one else who I'm going to be.
I love that. What stuck with me the most is really that when we think about beginnings, it's so often like, oh, okay, it's the first step I need to take. And like with you, for instance, start my YouTube channel or Instagram channel, and then it gets easier. But I think what I find so inspiring is that essentially, in you just said for you, it's a new beginning every day, right? Because every single day you have to take another first step and another first step. So I feel like, and that's what I'm also really trying to kind of, instill in myself, is that we need to get comfortable, right? That like every single day is this new change. Every single day you have to take a new step into the unknown. And sure, you can just like stay in your warm, fuzzy spot where you feel comfortable, but like growth truly happens, right? When we step out and every single day and like try to overcome it. So I think that's so cool that you like truly also feel that way, that no, you have like, even now after years of practicing yoga and being like, how many hours, like 600 hours certified yoga teacher, I think, right?
750.
700, sorry, 750. It's still right, for you, you say you have to motivate yourself and like take the step every single day. So that's just so fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's really so important, as you say, to really constantly put yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think one of the most important drivers for that, though, is also really feeling progress. If you start to see and feel progress, there's nothing better, because then you know, okay, what I'm doing is paying off and it's going to get me somewhere. And so I think that's really, really important to also now, if anyone is listening who wants to, for example, start their yoga journey or is doing yoga a lot, there, one of the things that helps me the most is filming my practice or taking pictures of my practice and tracking it through that. I mean, yeah, the goal of yoga is of course not like how deep and you can get into a pose or how much you can do with your body, but what I feel like the goal of yoga is to constantly develop and to just get to that best version of yourself. And for me, that's just really like getting my body to do whatever, like kind of like I feel like I want it to do, and just being able to move in a way I want to, and tracking that, and just like really seeing how, really just picturing basically how much you've changed is so important. Because if you also when you talked about it, and when you talked about me in the introduction, from the out or from yourself, you don't see the progress you're making. From the outside, people see it, but you yourself just don't. And that's why it's so important to just keep track of it as best as possible, somehow, to also really remind yourself how far you're coming. So yeah.
That's so, and I see that in so many of my friends or relatives that, you can see all the amazing things that another person is
Mhm.
doing, like
Mhm.
so much
Yeah.
easier than the person themselves, right? And like I always say, like I wish you could see yourself the way I'm seeing you, because I think it's especially women, right? Like we have that completely wrong, like just I don't know, figured idea or vision of ourselves, no matter like if it's our achievements or if it's just looking in our mirror and like body image, which is this whole other Pandora box, right? Like we always criticize
Yeah.
everything. We always think like, oh, that's not good
Totally.
enough. But
Yeah.
from the outset, someone might be looking at you and thinking, oh my God, like this woman has achieved so much and is so amazing. Like she's perfect, right? And like it's always like this negative
Yeah.
circle of you think it's never enough. So that's so true. Constantly remind yourself, like, no, like I've achieved it. Kind of almost like check in with yourself and be like, actually, no, I'm good the way I am, and that's what I achieved, and that's what I'm very proud of.
Yeah, totally. I also think it's so nice, for example, that we now talk because we kind of like remind each other now, right? Also of
Yes,
how far we've come, and so I think that's super important to also empower each other because it's really so difficult to do it with yourself. We just really have this
for sure.
crazy tendency of focusing on all the bad. So,
I was just thinking because you said how far we've come, thinking about like beginnings. The first time, I don't even think the first time we met. I think the first time I saw you in a lecture, because our studies was in September, right when you started, which is Oktoberfest
oh
in
yeah,
Munich. I am from Germany. I think you were actually in a dirndl, which is like
Ooh,
the yeah, which is the traditional dress that people like wear in case someone doesn't know at Oktoberfest. And I remember like seeing it, I was like, oh, I wonder if this girl just like came from partying all night or is like going to a Oktoberfest right after school. So I was thinking like, this is where it began. Like, and how far have you come from this moment to now? It was like our friendship. So it's just funny to like
that is
think about
so funny.
this.
Yeah. You know what I have as the first moment is that we were because we were in a course together also where we had to do like a just the like project work on something and where you signed up for the same topic as me and like we were put together as a team and then you dropped me again, then I think you changed course or something and you were just like bye.
That's
You
so
were
wrong.
sweet about it, but it's just like thank you.
Oh no.
No, but yeah, that's so funny. But it's really so crazy to think back. And first of all, that it's 10 years and
Yes,
to see us now, it's, yeah, it's a good
I
practice to
know.
really do more
Yeah,
often to,
absolutely.
like, yeah, also remind yourself.
We should. We should do that. Amazing. Well, I want to ask you. So I have this little segment that I want to do towards the end of every single guest called the final three. I just want to ask every guest the same final three questions and kind of see if there's maybe a pattern that will come through. So feel free to reply to them in as short or lengthy amount of time as you want. But the first question is, what really helped you go from this idea that you have about like, hey, this is something that I would love to do, to actually doing it, to actually like this first action? What was it for you?
I think for me, so if we say like the whole social media now, it was to just actually put up a camera and start like filming myself, start taking pictures of myself. I think really get going into that creative process actually, because I think once you get creative and do what you love to do and enjoy, it's kind of then you also want to show it to people, right? Then you also want to be like, this is what I've been doing. And I think so yeah, get going, just diving into it first, like head first, and being creative with it. Yeah. I think
Yeah, love that. Okay, second final question. What was your biggest fear when you started? And most importantly, did it come true?
it was probably that I would get criticized or would get, yeah, stupid comments, or I have to think, yeah, yeah, that, or that people would think like, oh my god, she's completely crazy, or like, what the hell is she doing? I think that was like my biggest fear. Yeah, I think, yeah, I didn't think,
And did it come true?
yeah, it did not come true. Yeah, no, it's been really just
No,
positive, luckily. So yeah,
nice. And the very last question from me, what was your greatest learning?
I think my greatest learning is probably that to achieve what you really want to achieve, it takes two things. It takes, first of all, I think really the belief that it's possible, like strongly believing it's possible. And sometimes we have to see someone else doing it to believe it's possible, right? That can be really helpful. So really getting kind of like a vision, and just knowing you can do it, or believing you can do it. And second is to put in the work. So I think it's always a combination of those two, believing in it, but also working for it. Like either one is just not enough, I believe. I think it always takes both, whatever you want to achieve.
What a beautiful ending. Nikki, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being my very, very first guest and for supporting me on this journey.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved it. And I cannot wait to see where this goes.
Well, thank you, Nikki.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye bye.